Hiya folks, and welcome back. This is Fafnir's Fortress by Waier, and I've been waiting to show you this puzzle for several months now. In a previous video, I showed you Box by Luke, which you should definitely check out if you haven't already. But for Fafnir's Fortress, this one was originally released as a 3D printed puzzle in 2024 that quickly sold out, becoming one of the best puzzles of the year, and skyrocketed in price on the secondary market. Last year, Luke released an all-metal version of Fafnir's Fortress, using aluminum, stainless steel, and other metals, which meant that I could finally get my hands on one. The solve is the same as the 3D printed version, but the reason I held off showing this puzzle until now is because Luke just released the stand that goes along with it. Not only does it add to the castle's themed aesthetic of the puzzle, but it also has a hidden puzzle mechanic with a final reveal to Fafnir's Fortress. The stand is 3D printed, but a great touch to the puzzle. So Luke has made an amazing puzzle even better. And I can't wait to walk you through the ins and outs of it. The only unfortunate thing is that this puzzle doesn't come with any instructions on what the goals are or the background to the puzzle. And Luke's website no longer contains this information either. But with the internet being such a great thing, we can use the Wayback Machine to access a previous version of Luke's website to get that information. So here we see that the puzzle is themed on the Old Norse myth of the dragon Fafnir. In this fable, Fafnir was a dwarf that killed his father, stole his father's treasure, and then turned himself into a dragon to protect the stolen hoard. Later, a young hero, Sigurd, outwitted and slew Fafnir and took back the treasure. So there are three objectives for this puzzle, the first being to find the sword of Sigurd, then to slay or remove the dragon Fafnir, and lastly to reclaim the stolen treasure. But beware of Fafnir's tricks. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and solve this thing.
Solve begins in 3, 2, 1.
So I'm going to put the base to the side because that's going to come at the very end. But where would you go ahead and start off with Fafnir's Fortress? You can see in the window here there is a dragon inside, which looks to be Fafnir himself. There are several different pieces as you work your way around the puzzle itself. But what would you do first? For me, that was removing the turret, or at least attempting to, but lo and behold, this does unscrew. And we have a piece, we have a tool that's going to come into handy later on. But you'll notice on the side of the castle, there are a couple of bricks that stand out. What we can do is we can press in on these two bricks to remove this brick like so. And that's held in place by a magnet, and that allows us to remove a couple of tools. You may have noticed underneath on the bottom there is this little slot, and that's because if you're like me and you put this brick back in place, it's now stuck in place due to the magnet. This button doesn't work, so Luke graciously added this way for us to slide this piece out so we don't brick the puzzle. So now that we have some tools at our disposal, we can see if any of them will fit into any of the slots or unscrew any of bolts or screws that are in place. And you will notice that this one will fit into the back of the puzzle or of the castle, but you can't really turn it, at least I can't. But we can use the turret that was removed earlier and use that as a tool to go ahead and unloose the screw that's in place. And as you do that, you'll see that the front of the castle, which looks to be the drawbridge to me, starts to loosen. And we can then remove this screw in place, like so, and then remove the drawbridge. So a nice piece that was just removed. The indent here is where these pieces were slid through the front of the puzzle, but we have this piece. But we can now look through the front door of the puzzle. There is a little nut that we can also remove. So I'm just going to put this to the side. And this is where we're at so far. So lots of pieces, lots of implements that can be used. But how do we use them? There is another piece, another pin. We can try pushing in on that. That doesn't do anything. On the bottom, we can try manipulating all of the pieces down here. They don't do anything. This is where For many, and myself included, this took some time to figure out what's next. There certainly is this large bolt that goes all the way from the bottom to the top where we removed the turret. There's also another pin that's in place here. We have a little hole on the top front right here where my finger's at, but both of these holes are too small for any tool to go through. So messing around with the turret, you find a couple of things. One, if you were to put this piece back in, you can actually unscrew a hidden piece that's inside. So I love the idea of a tool within a tool. I've seen that before, and it's always fun when you come across a piece that's more than meets the eye. But we can go ahead, and now that we've removed this insert, we can try and unscrew the bolt that runs through the castle. And it does, as we know, go through, but it does not loosen the bolt any. But to loosen that bolt, what needs to happen is we need to use this piece that we pulled out earlier and put that inside. And now that acts as a mechanism, I'm not sure what to call it, but that does allow us to grip the bolt in a way that we can loosen it and ultimately remove it from the bottom here. So we've loosened the bolt from the bottom here so we can twist off the turret from the top. And then we can use our fingers just to unscrew the bolt from the rest of the way through the castle. All right, so we are back, and this is another part that can be a bit tricky. But what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the 2 bricks that we initially pressed on to retrieve those 2 tools. We're actually going to put those tools back in place where they were initially. And this time what we're going to do is we're just going to use this black screw that we retrieved earlier. And that's going to allow us to push out these 2 bricks that were held in place by a magnet. So we can go ahead and remove those and all of the pieces that we used to push that out. And now we see an exposed side of the castle as we look inside. You'll see that there is some golden piece that's being held in place by a pin. And we've got the hole at the bottom, which is where all those pieces were initially housed. We have another hole as well above it to the left. So we're going to use the tools that we've acquired previously to go into that slot. You'll notice that we can fit that piece in pretty far, but it's impossible to rotate this with how far that it's in. But if we use another piece that we've required, that black screw, the piece that we already have in the castle will fit inside the screw, and we can use that to twist to the right, and ultimately that will start to slide out the piece on the side of the puzzle that we can then go ahead and retrieve. So now we have a smaller pin that won't fit in the hole right here, but it does fit in the hole where that turret was. And pressing down on that pin allows us to lower the pin that's blocking the gold piece. So we can go ahead and we can retrieve what actually is Sigurd's sword. So this was the first challenge of this puzzle, is to remove the sword of Sigurd, which we've done. Now we can use this sword in the hole right here, and pressing down on that lowers this compartment, which has a coin. And there's some really great symbolism that I love of putting the sword going down towards the dragon's head as if to slay the dragon Fafnir. So really cool analogy right there. But we do have this metal coin. On the one end, there is the dragon, there is Fafnir himself. And on the other side, there appears to be some buildings, Fafnir flying overhead. And on the outside of the coin, there are some symbols, some runes. I spent a long time trying to decipher what these meant. And from what I could see, they're not actually runes. These symbols are a lot more rounded than typical runes, which have more straight lines to them. So it seems to me that the symbols along the edge are just decorative and that there isn't any hidden meaning, sadly. But we've retrieved the coin that has Fafnir on it. Have we slain Fafnir by putting the sword through the top of the castle? Well, no, this is not Fafnir. This is one of his tricks that he is giving us the illusion that this is him, but we still need to find and slay Fafnir. You might not have noticed it previously because I probably didn't show it, but where that turret was, there is a thin slotted hole facing the inside of the castle. And now that we've retrieved this coin, we can go ahead and insert that coin in. And once it's in place and we push it in further, that kicks out 2 bricks on the back of the puzzle. And removing those reveals Fafnir. So here's the real Fafnir that we're looking to remove or slay, but right now it's currently trapped within the puzzle. But how cool does that look right now? If we move the dragon to the right, you'll see that there is this little piece right where my finger's at, and we can go ahead and remove that. And we now have a little screwdriver of a tool that we can now use to remove the 4 screws at the bottom of the puzzle. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this all and cut to me having it done. So now that I've removed those 4 screws, I'm going to go ahead and flip this back so it is right side up. And at this point, the castle is no longer held in place, and you can remove each layer one at a time. So removing the top layer allows us to find Fafnir and actually remove him, slay him, and just a very cool, well-designed, very detailed representation of the dragon here, which in my mind is one of the nicer prize elements to any puzzle box that I've solved thus far. But you can see all the different pins. You can see that this is where the sword was initially housed. Here is the pin that was lowered to retrieve that sword. And one of the things that's really cool about solving this puzzle is that it requires you to totally deconstruct the puzzle itself. So what's really cool is being able to see all components of the puzzle itself and how it was put together. But if we go ahead and remove this last layer, we end up seeing this coin, the treasure that Sigurd was after. On one end of the coin, you see another representation of Sigurd. And on the other side, you see this, I don't know if this is an L or if this is a Z or N. I'm not sure what letter this is to represent. But on the outside, you do see more characteristic runes. The same message is on both sides of the coin. And I spent a very, very long time trying to decipher what that message is. The challenge is that there are so many different runic alphabets with different variations to the letters, and it didn't seem like one alphabet matched all of the letters particularly. Again, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what does this message mean. I took pictures of it to show ChatGPT to see if they could give me any assistance, and sadly, I think these are also just for decoration. It would have been really cool if I'm wrong, and it does mean something. But if you've solved this or you have any insight, I'd love to know, is there a hidden message somewhere in this coin? I think it would be a really cool bonus if there is, but maybe again, this was just for design only. But that is the Fafnir's Fortress puzzle box, and as you can see, there are pieces everywhere. I've never had as much of a challenge putting a puzzle back together as I had with this, just because there's so many pieces that you literally have to figure out what goes in what order. But we're not done yet.
But wait! There's more!
Remember, we have the new base, we have the final element of this puzzle box, and this is where that coin is going to come into play. So if we press that down, it fits perfectly in. We can press it down a bit. And then if you've got fingernails, you can go ahead and remove the coin with the lid in place. And underneath, we see the treasure. So this is the real treasure that Fafnir hid, that Sigurd was looking for. Inside, we see tons of gold coins and bars, but most impressively enough, we see a gold ring. How cool is this? When I first saw it, I was just blown away at something so simple, but yet something so fun just to really tie this puzzle together. We already had Fafnir, we had tons of tools, we had the coin itself, but to see this final ring really just made this treasure a real treat for me, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. If you haven't yet already seen Box, here's a link to check that out and be a amazed with it as I was. But thank you again for watching me solve this puzzle. Until next time.